You know, sometimes time and patience, you could find good deals. All of this was 75 bucks. Just to give you some scale, I'll stand next to it. So this is a lot, and this will easily fill up this whole garage and then some, probably for my house as well. So this is a great blessing. This is one of the things that was holding me back from this project, and finishing it up this before the winter comes. Believe it or not, I fit this in my little Scion vehicle with a trailer. So in order to get to the installation, I had to rough in the wiring, and I'm going to just briefly explain what wiring is. I did not know what I was doing when I was doing my tiny house shed in the back, but I figured it out enough, and just the basic ideas, so it's not so intimidating. But basically, you see this regular household wiring that you see all the time, and this is the main wire that you'd use for powering all your outlets. And I powered one outlet just to use it for, you know, charging things in the radio and stuff. And that's all you need. I mean, that's the basic idea, to power everything. And when you take this wire that has 3 wires in the back, you got the hot wire, the neutral wire, and then the ground. And then as soon as you hook that up, it's powered up on both of these inlet outlets. So I basically just have the wire going into the back of this, and I have all the power I need from that plug. And from there, if you want to continue on with the power, it has another set of screws up here for connections for this wire to continue. And so it'll just come out the top there and then continue on to your next outlet. Same thing, just hooks on to the back, the hot wire, neutral, and then the ground, and then you'd have another outlet. And then if you want to continue on, just the same thing. And if you want a light switch and a light, you could just tap into this power here, and the wire comes out the top, and you can run it up to a switch, which basically just breaks the power between the wires to a light. And that's just the basic concept with that. So it's not that difficult once you catch on to the concept of it. You know, I did not know this before, and I was intimidated because I just didn't know all the little details and hookups, but that's the general concept. And I have an outlet over there coming to this power outlet, and I could have stopped there, but I wanted a light up here for a kitchen, so I just continued the wire up here to power it. And then now I have a switch, another outlet, or another outlet here and a switch, and then they can go up to the light. So that's all it is just outlets and switches, outlets and switches. It just powers up the circuit. You could have somebody check it out later if you wanted to, and I even figured out, you know, how to do an electrical box. But if you're trying to figure out, you know, a little sub panel box, I mean, this is probably the best to learn from, because it's the simplest setup, and you're always working with just your hot wire, which is the black, the neutral wire, which is the white, and then your ground. And you kind of just look in there to see what it's doing. And in here, they actually set this up wrong, and I've noticed this. And so here's the main power source coming in from the house, and then they have all the neutrals are hooked into this bar right here, so they're just all hooked up together. And then the black hot wire is hooked in on this one, so this powers up all of this bar and everything. Then it powers up all of this, you know, where these switches hook up into. So this is now a hot circuit when it's all hooked up like that. And then anything else, when you want to hook in a circuit, basically this just has two circuits on this, one circuit here and then one circuit here. So this one is hooked up with, and so that this side of it, this wire just is going to have to hook into this part of the circuit so you can switch it on and off. That's the basic idea, and then you can just see where the white wire will hook into that bar, and then this hot circuit will have to go through the switch and to throw the switch. And then this neutral, there should be a neutral bar in here somewhere for this to hook into, just so it hooks into this metal part and grounds everything. But when they installed it, they actually cut off the neutral wire because they probably didn't know where to put it or something. But you could buy these little bars that look like this, and then you could install it and screw it right into the box. You're basically just trying to power it up, the whole thing, with the main power wire, and then the rest, any circuit that you want, the hot wire has to go through a breaker to break the power. But so I'm in my tiny house shed now, and I'll show you the difference. It's basically the exact same thing, and this, so you'll see the little differences. So I don't have, this is not hooked up to anything, but I did have this switch here that came with two breaks on it, so I still have the same two circuits, one for this side of the shed and then the other side. So essentially it's the same as having two in there, but since it came on the same switch, it's the same thing. And so I have the main power source coming in from the bottom through that orange wire, and then all the same as the other one, all of the neutrals go in that bar up here, and then the main power source goes into the main bar on the back to power everything up. And then I have a grounding bar up here that I had to buy and screw into the box, and so all the grounding wires can screw into that. And then of course you see all the neutral wires that they're all the circuits are hooking into, and then for the circuits the hot wires are going into the switches. So the more advanced people that know that there's also something else wrong with this, not only the grounding has been cut off and that's wrong, but this household, this wire that came in is not the right gauge for two 15 amp circuits. This does not hold 30 amps that I would need to divide it into two 15s. This is a 20 amp gauge wire, and so I'm going to be taking this 30 amp gauge wire so it can handle the 30 amps, and then it'll go right into and replace this wire to power this up with 30 amps, so I could divide it into 15 on both sides. So if that makes sense. And this is a 20 amp going out of here, so I can have an option for this circuit for a 20 amp something that I would want later, and that's why I'm using this gauge of wire for that circuit. But I just wanted to point out that I recognize that this this power supply wire is not the right gauge. So as much as I'm not an electrician, I at least can figure out what they did wrong, and I can make it right. And I'll briefly mention the code on here, what gauge wire things are. This is the orange wire that I showed you before for the 30 amp. This handles 30 amps. And basically it just shows the gauge of the wire here. That's a 10. And then there's 2 wires inside. This is the yellow, which is the 12 gauge. So instead of a 10, this is a 12. And then it says a 2 on the side there because there's 2 wires inside. The hot wire and the neutral wire. And then they don't count the ground wire. So that just is not counted in that code. And so pretty much all of them are the same with how many wires inside of it for the basic wiring of the house. And that white wire that you see commonly, a 14 gauge. So you'll see a 14 and a 2. So instead of a 10 and 2, it'll say 14 and 2 wires inside. Just looks just like that. Hot, neutral for the 2 wires, and then there's a ground on it. There are other wires for different configurations. Sometimes they have 3 wires inside for, other bigger powered things or stuff like that. So this is the installation without any face on it, so I kind of have to work it in there and then staple the side of it to hold it up. I have this temporary board just to keep it in, and with the wiring, if you're wondering, you could split this in half, and you could put this half behind the wire, so basically the wire goes in between. I think I only used 3 of those big rolls. I already have all the walls pretty much filled in, so I'm going to have a lot left over. I really had no idea how much I had here, so I'll be able to take care of my house, definitely. One of the issues that I have to start thinking about is reinforcing these trusses, and I have to reinforce it similar to what they have there, but a lot better. I'm going to use a 2x6 and make it longer and a lot more rigid than that is. Starting to clear the way for this upper loft part. There is that channel I mentioned, forget his name, something renovation video, but I'll post a link down below. But he gives some great ideas on how to deal with. This is a cathedral style where it goes out to a point like that, and so I know exactly what I can do to reinforce these things. Basically do the same thing that they did here, except for do it better, because it's not exactly straight. It's kind of just jimmy rigged in there. But I'm gonna take these 2x10s that were here for this loft, cut it at an angle, and then cut the angles off there, and then put them in with some lag screws, and that'll really reinforce that thing. And then I'll be able to take this support out after I brace it up there. Also, I have this issue right here where it kind of cracked off there, so that'll reinforce that as well. So I figured out that these 2x10s are a little too rotten or just light. They've been sitting out for a long time next to a barn. So I'm going to use this sucker. This is a good 16 feet long for supports like that, support beam. So I'll cut this up and use that. I think it's like 2x12 or something.
Okay, there's the first support on there. That's what I'm talking about. That's not going anywhere. There's some lag bolts that I put in there. It's a beast to try to get in there because the just holding it up there and trying to crank it at the same time. But if you've never used one of these impact drills, impact wrenches, for something like this, comes in real handy. Now I'm going to take a board and support this. I found my own way of finding that angle on the top. Some of these roofs are like 45 degrees and that's easy, but what I did was I just went to the outside and just kind of traced the back of a piece of cardboard. That's how I got the angle. It's a really simple way of doing that. I know there's other ways of doing it, but I just make up my own simple way. So I put some of this liquid nails on this side just to reinforce it as much as I can and make this piece of wood as if it's one piece of wood. This helps out. Gotta make up for this lost piece. There it is. Not too difficult, very simple concept. I leveled it out, the leveler, and just put in some more lag bolts with those. I chose the 2x6, so I just felt like it was better than a 2x4 like they had before. But that looks really sturdy, and I'm able to hang on this no problem. Really solid. I don't have any bowing or any play in it at all like it did before. So I'm just gonna repeat the process there, here, and there. Once I started getting into a groove, I was able to go a little quicker on these other ones. But this is solid and I feel really good about this one. I was able to hang on that. It doesn't have any give whatsoever. And even without those supports as it was before, I had so much stuff on there and it was kind of bowing down a little bit. But this is going to be no problem. Already I'm starting to think of possibilities, maybe a ladder or steps up to that upper part right there and then just put flooring in the rest of it. I'm always thinking, you know, cool little nooks and crannies for kids to go into and find a place to sleep, but in the upper loft of any home you're gonna get some heat problems unless there's, you know, a lot of good ventilation, meaning if you're gonna sleep up there, that's where all the heat's gonna go. So summertime and wintertime, whatever it is, it's always gonna be warmer up there. So you have to think ahead for that, but it could be to your advantage if you wanted to stay warmer up there and so it doesn't take as much heat down here. But the thing is, it's going to be colder down here. And I've watched other people with tiny houses and they said they were nice and comfy upstairs, but their guests downstairs were colder. So if they crank the heat down there, then the people upstairs are going to be too hot. So you just kind of have to plan ahead. I might just do a kind of a vent area so there can be circulation if there needs to be. And I don't know. If not, it could just be a little play area or like a storage or temporary place.